And welcome back, everybody, to episode 170 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room. Over 300 beers to choose from at all their locations. Whether you're going to celebrate a Bills win, watch a Bills game, you drown your sorrows after a Sabres loss, celebrate a Sabres win, whatever the occasion might be, or just looking to have a good time, get over to Fatty Beer. The vibes, the entertainment, the trivia, they have everything. And, of course, Buffalo Logo Apparel, one of the better spots to get all of your Buffalo sports apparel needs. Whether it's your shirts, your hats, your hoodies, they have everything at Buffalo Logo Co. on Instagram and Twitter, at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter, fattybeer.com, buffalogo.com. I am Duane, joined by my co-host Connor Hurls. How was your week?
Pretty good, especially after Sunday. That was a nice start to it. Still not quite coming down off that high, which is nice, especially after the embarrassment of a Sabres loss on Saturday. So that was a nice other end of the spectrum in terms of my sports fanship. But out here in California, I'm going to both the Kings game tomorrow night in person and then in Anaheim on Friday as well. So super excited and hopeful that the team can figure it out and put pretty well on this West Coast swing, because 4 of 6 points would be great, but I think 6 of 6 is very, very possible given the matchups.
Yeah, you would hope so. I know Alex Tuck skated with the team today, so hopefully he's on track to get back in the lineup. Did we get any updates on Tage today?
I was going to read something earlier. I think it looks like it's probably not going to happen tomorrow night. From what
3 games now.
Yeah, I think they're going to wait. I'd be surprised if he played this trip, to be honest. It seems like it's a lower body injury, obviously, but it seems like something that could be re-aggravated. That's what I read. I think it was from Lance at the Buffalo News today. So yeah. I think they're going to be very cautious with it, especially on a road trip like this. You're going to want Tage for an upcoming homestand and an even tougher December. So I'd say he won't play, but who knows? Maybe he'll be able to tough it out.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to the Buffalo News, unfortunately, so I can't always read all their articles. But, 3 hours ago from Lance, no update on Tuck and Thompson following the Sabres practice this afternoon. Their availability for the Kings game will be based on how they recover from practice. We'll hear from Lindy Ruff after the morning skate. But again, like you said, I'm not sure if you read it or not, but this team cannot afford to go any for longer without Tage Thompson, let alone both Tage Thompson and Alex Tuck. That's 2 out of your 3 top players.
Yeah, and Jordan Greenway, which seems like it's going to be week to week at this point. So they bring up Isaac Rosian, who's 13 points in 14 games in the AHL. That's pretty good, and he's been a pretty consistent producer down there. And I think his game is pretty well tailored to being a responsible NHL player. He's not going to light the scoreboard up, but he's at least going to be good defensively, and he's going to be relatively responsible. So hopefully that could be pretty good. But obviously not having that high-end offensive production from both Thompson and Tuck would be pretty bad.
Yeah, it's definitely going to hurt. The Jordan Greenway, I think people are going to realize with him out of the lineup how big of a role he really plays. Yeah, we see it from game to game, and sometimes he gets on the score sheet and scores a nice goal, scores a blue collar goal. But I think especially on the penalty kill, you're really going to notice how much his team is going to miss him.
Yeah, he's a Lindy Ruff type player. He's pretty much proven his worth this season. He's had not the most incredible offensive production, but that's not really what you expect of him. He's been a really good penalty killer. He's played really solid defensively on the third line. And his presence is going to be missed for sure. But hopefully they're able to at least somewhat replicate that with a combination 2 to 3 different guys in different roles. And I do think they will at least be able to match his offensive production, but hopefully fill in the role defensively with a few different guys.
Yep. And Yoki Haru, I believe he's sliding back in the lineup tomorrow night too, from what I heard. So he's one of our few right-handed defensemen. He's going to get back in the lineup. I would expect that, whatever Lindy was seeing, I mean, again, not saying that Yoki Haru was playing well, but I was kind of surprised to see him out of the lineup for as long as I did.
Yeah, his underlying numbers weren't horrible compared to last season. And then I think from what I read from Lance again is that he wanted a little bit more physicality, and he wanted a little bit more presence in front of his own net, which I think you could ask the same for every Sabres defenseman.
Every single one of them,
including Owen Power, including Rasmus Dahlin, including Bowen Byram, including all of your top guys. You're going to want these guys to be a little bit more physical, a little bit more responsible in front of their own net, because the goaltenders haven't played as the best in the NHL all season, but they've also been put in really tough positions by their defense and even the forwards in the defensive zone as well. So I think Lindy's going to want that level of play from everybody, not just Yoki Haru, who's been taken out of the lineup.
Yeah, and you want to know when it comes to goaltending too, I understand fully why they decided to make the move with Levi. Lindy said it best. He needs to play. As simple as that. He needs to play. He needs to play games. Totally get it. The one cause for concern for me is James. I know it's a small sample size. It's like 3 games. But James Reimer's numbers aren't much better than Devin Levi. They're actually much worse. He has over 4.0 goals against average. He's not Craig Anderson by any stretch, who you could rely on, those final 2 years we had, him. What scares me is that you're going to ride UPL till the wheels fall off, and then you're going to put yourself in a situation where you're struggling to get points when he can't play.
So I saw those same numbers. I saw the goals against and the save percentage. Not to get too deep down the rabbit.
It's a small sample size, but still.
Not to get too deep down the rabbit hole here, but Chad over at Expected Buffalo, he did look into it a little bit more, and he's at least in the territory of goals saved above expected, right? Like putting himself in situations that are really tough. Obviously, the Ducks defense isn't very good, and they haven't been good for a very long time. So he's been in tough situations, and at least the situations that are a little bit difficult, he's performed somewhat admirably. So the goals against and the save percentage didn't tell the full story there from what I gathered, which makes me at least slightly optimistic. And another conversation is that James Reimer has been in this position as a backup before. He's done this type of thing, going 10, 12 games, not playing, and then coming in and at least giving you a game that he can play well enough to help you win. That's the job of a backup goalie, to be ready at any moment, to not expect to play more than once or twice in the span of 2 weeks, especially if you have a bell cow starter that you trust. Whereas Devin Levi, in his hockey career, has never been used to that role. He's always been the starter. He's always been playing probably 3 to 4 times a week since he was maybe, 15, 16 years old. And he's been playing a lot. And I think he's at his best when he gets a lot of shots and when he's in a groove. So as Lindy said, playing and getting pucks outside of practice, I think he mentioned getting in the chaos of a game and getting game situations, especially in the AHL, which is not a bad league by any stretch of the imagination, will be helpful for him moving forward. So that's why I do think it is the correct move at this decision. He wasn't horrible, and he was being put in bad situations, especially on Saturday. But they want a higher floor. They want a higher baseline from him moving forward. And I think that's what we can expect when he gets back.
We look at his last game too. He lets in the 4 goals. And I listen to other hockey podcasts. I listen to After the Whistle, and Craig Rivet, who's normally, again, we know he's not a numbers guy. No, both those guys are numbers guys. They don't look at expected, goals for, or, above whatever you just said. And neither am I, obviously. But we both know the position and know what saves should be made and what saves aren't being made. I'm just like, he even said that last game, like, how can you put that on any goalie? Like the 2-on-0, like, what do you want him to do? Mitchkov made a great move. I mean, no goalie's making that save.
And the one being talked about is obviously that tip, but that's just a tough situation.
That's just anybody who that's on the goalie. I'm sorry, dude. No, don't, because you can tell he was looking for the puck, and he did not see that puck until it was half a foot in front of him.
And
how are you supposed to react to that?
Exactly. I would also agree with you, but that's low-hanging fruit for anyone that criticizes a goalie to point to, right? And I don't think that's the reason he was sent down. It's more of a combination of everything that's happened since he's been in the NHL this season. And I would also say that it's emblematic of how well UPL has played when he's been healthy and when he's been at his best. He can be, and I think still needs to prove it at a more consistent basis, that he can be a top 10, top 15 starter in the league, maybe even top 5 when he's at his best. So if you have that type of guy, you're going to ride him as much as you possibly can. And having a guy like Reimer, who's been not a career backup, but he's been a backup for most of his career, and even a starter in certain situations, that's ready to come in once every 2 weeks, at least for the next couple of months, and give you a game that you can win against some of the lesser teams. That's, I think, what they want right now, while also developing Devin Levi down in the AHL, which is not that much of a demotion by any means. Like, it's a very good league. I don't
think he takes it as demotion.
No, I don't think so either. It's not a setback. It's not a demotion. It's what's good for his development as a 22-year-old player. And it's as simple as that.
And I think it was in our one chat, we saw all the combined games played between like Marty Baron, Olmark, UPL, and like all the games they played in Rochester, Ryan Miller. And for the most part, the first 3 names I named, Olmark, Miller, Baron, they all played in the triple digits in the AHL before they came to the NHL.
Yeah, and even guys like Connor Hellebuck and the best goalies in the league, they all had that level of development before getting to the NHL. A path for a goalie isn't linear in terms of when you're at your best, when you can possibly be the best version of yourself. And it's usually not early, because it does take time to get used to angles and experience and the speed of the NHL game. I personally am 32 years old, and I've never felt better about my angles and my wisdom playing the game of hockey. And I'm in one of the best leagues I've ever been, in my beer league over at the place where the Sabres practice today in El Segundo, actually. So it's nonlinear. It's different for every goalie. And I really do think it comes down to game situations and getting as many pucks as possible, which is he's going to get in the AHL. So it's the best thing for him moving forward.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I would have been fine if they would have kept him up here, because I've also been a proponent of, you might not be getting game action, but you're also taking shots every day from NHL players. Like, you're in NHL level practices.
Right.
That's also a way for you to develop. But
it's just those game situations that, like, you would.
No, I get it.
Yeah, that that like you can take as many shots from Tage Thompson in practice as you want, but you're never going to get a situation like you did when a puck gets deflected 15 feet into the air, and you got to try to find it and react to it, and also control your rebounds with a scrum in front of you, right? Like, I don't necessarily think he played that badly. It's just more so that you need to put yourself in those positions to succeed moving forward. And I think getting those opportunities in the AHL, like he did at the end of last season, when he played as well as he did leading into the playoffs, is going to benefit him moving forward.
Yeah, I think it will benefit him. I mean, like I said, I'm very on the fence with the whole situation. And like you said, you talked about Chad's article about what was the stat expected.
Reimer goals saved above expected. Yeah, and goals saved in like
I would be curious. When we just talked about that last game, I'd be curious to see what those numbers indicated in that last start for Levi. Like, what was his number? Like, I would be curious, because that's why I don't always put too much stock into analytics.
Yeah, and just based upon all of his minutes this season, he is in the bottom 5 of the league with those numbers, right? And that's to be expected of a goalie that hasn't had much time in the NHL and is also being put in bad situations, right? So everything at this point is saying, like, hey, let's just take a breath. Like, a lot of pressure was put on him from the jump. He had a really, really good start, and they mishandled it from the beginning last season by starting him in those first 4 games. He got hurt, and then he wasn't fully the same after that. Getting him down there, getting him 20, 30 games, all of these shots, all of these situations, I really do think is going to help him moving forward.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I guess Chris Baker disagrees, but from what Captain Ahab mentioned. next, my next thought was this West Coast trip. You know, we talked at the top of the show how important it is to come out of this trip with minimum 4 points. I think we even said after the Philly loss how badly you maybe need 5 out of 6 points. You see these teams a little more often than us as Sabres fans do. You know, you live there. What can we expect from LA? There's a good chance we see Eric Portillo against LA too.
That would be ironic, to say the least.
Yes.
Well, I think most everybody that probably listens to this show saw the first game against the Kings and how weird of a team and how difficult they can be in certain situations. Sabres up the entire game. They're not generating anything offensively. A couple bad penalties happen, and they take advantage, and Kopitar goes nuclear and wins the game in the last 5 minutes. So they've got the guys. You're very familiar with all of their top guys. And even since that game, that was their first game of the season. They're 10-6-3 so far. And they play a pretty tough schedule, and they played a lot of games on the road. And I also know that they're typically very, very good at home. I think last season it was 3 days after the Bills lost in the playoffs to the Chiefs. I was in the building, and nobody expected the Sabres to go in there and win the game. I think it was a game Levi started. He had previously been in the AHL. They got down early, and then Jack Quinn and Peterka just went absolutely nuclear, and they were able to come back and win the game, I think 6-3. It's going to take that type of effort. I think of the 3 games, tomorrow's game against the Kings is absolutely going to be the toughest. And then the Ducks and the Sharks are in the basement of the league and probably up for this upcoming draft's lottery pick. They're probably going to be in the running for who gets the right to draft James Higgins or any of the other top prospects. So those are teams that you absolutely should beat. But I will say about the Sabres this season, they've played up to their competition. Look at a game like they had on the road against the New York Rangers, that the win they had against the Dallas Stars. They have at least gotten up for games that none of us really expected them to win, and they've lost some games that I think we all would agree that they should have won. So that makes me a little bit more optimistic, but obviously that's very dependent upon if Alex Tuch and Tage Thompson are playing, because they'll be very behind the 8 ball, especially tomorrow if both of them are not in the lineup.
Agreed. From Mauricio, we'd be lucky to get 2 points on being real. Like no Thompson, no Tuch, no Greenway. You're going to rely on Cousins and Quinn to step up. Good luck. Which does bring me to my next question. What do you do with Jack Quinn if he comes out of this road trip with 1 or less points or 2 or less points? You know what I mean? Like in a situation where you might be without those guys we just mentioned, you know, what do you do with Jack Quinn at this point?
Yeah, I think
you can send him down. I think, can't you not? He's still on an entry-level contract.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it previously. Like that has to be an option if he's got 1 goal in the first 25 games. If he's not producing at the level that anybody expected him to, and he's not developing and coming back from his injuries, right? Like he either needs to sit down and take some time and rehab a little bit more, get stronger, get faster, or he needs to gain his confidence back down in the AHL. So I don't think any of those solutions are off the table here, right? Like he hasn't looked close to the player that he was, even when he came back from his initial Achilles injury last, I think, January. He even looked pretty good, and he was really, really good at 5-on-5. And he looks like he had that confidence and he had that goal scoring ability. So yeah, if he, especially in the next 4 to 5 games, if he still only has 1 empty net goal and he's not producing even from a playmaking perspective, that has to be an option, because right now it's just not cutting it. And I do believe Dylan Cousins has continued to be a little bit better. Obviously, no one was really good on Saturday against the Flyers, but I do see a little bit more jump to his game, and he does look like the player that we all knew from a season and a half ago. So optimistic about that, but obviously a guy that you expected to hopefully score 20 goals, maybe 50 points on your second line, and Jack Quinn not producing thus far is a massive, massive issue. And if you do send him down, something Kevyn Adams in his back pocket thinks we say that he's talking around the league, and I know you make jokes about he's always on the phones, but he has shown the willingness to make a mid-season trade, a hockey trade, and he's done it before. So I wouldn't be surprised if he.
Well, if there's a time to do it now, it's
exactly
right now.
Like that would be a situation where a guy in your top 6 is not in your top 6 anymore. and you already barely added to your forward group. Ryan McLeod is now effectively in your top 6, and he's earned that spot in the top 6. You might need to go out and get another guy to help this team stay above water.
But with him earning that spot in the top 6, you still much rather have him in a depth role where you can provide in a third line, which is why you went and got him. Yeah. That guy was a depth piece. He's brought in for his speed, is a good two-way player. With Tage, initially I think this was reported that he wasn't going to miss any time, and now we're looking at 3, 4, 5. Like you said, what if he doesn't play this entire West Coast trip? What is that, 5 or 6 games?
Yeah,
we've talked about this. Like, you can't afford injuries even to this effect, even if it is just 4 games. I mean, he has scored in almost every single one of their wins. You know what I mean? Like, he's essentially put this team on his back for most of the season so far. And their success is very, very reliant on his production. And then you add in Greenway, who's been, I wouldn't say a surprise, because I thought he was starting to come on late in the last season, and we started to like his game, but really started to impress this season under Lindy Ruff. And we've even talked on the show about extending him fairly soon. Without that guy, kind of head manning your penalty kill, not having him play that dominant role of going to the net, leading by example, finding the garbage in front and burying it like he has multiple times this season. And then Alex Tuch, who we've talked about on this show, how good him and Tage Thompson are always together, no matter who that other winger is. They find a way to still make it work. To not have those 3 guys potentially for this entire trip, hopefully it's not that. It isn't that. I mean, I go back to Mauricio's comment. They could literally only come out of this trip with 2 points. And that at that point, if that does happen, is Kevyn Adams on the hot seat?
Well, I think he's on the hot seat if they don't make the playoffs. So, yes, he is. His seat is hot. Like, it's been hot, and it's going to continue to be hot unless they make the playoffs. So, to answer your question, yes. There's a reason Lindy Ruff put the standings up in the Sabres locker room. There's a reason that guys like Peyton Krebs and even Tage today are talking about how they need to play every game like it's Game 7. How when they win a couple games, they forget that they don't have to continue to work hard, and they just try to rely on skill to keep winning these games and scoring these really cool goals and whatnot, and forgetting about their roots. So, yes, absolutely he is. And I think he knows that. And I do believe he's at least having conversations with other GMs, because he knows how wide open this conference is at the moment. The Boston Bruins just fired their head coach.
Yeah.
They are currently in the second wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. And I think they have 2 games in hand on the Sabres. If the Sabres were to win tomorrow night, they would have the tiebreaker, and they would be in the second wild card spot. So as up and down and mediocre as it's been, they're not out of it by any means. If you go on a pretty good stretch here, win 7 of 10 games, as we keep talking about, you're going to be in a good position come December to put yourself in a position to be in the mix come 2025. So, yeah, I mean, he's on the hot seat, but I also think he knows that he has been for a long time.
Yeah, I think that if there was any time to really to make a deal, like it's not now. I don't think it's going to happen during this trip, but coming back from it, depending how well things go, yeah, I think right then and there you really have to make a move mid-season to bolster this team, because the struggles on defense. They need help on defense. I wouldn't mind if Levi is going to be the guy. If Levi's going to be the guy in Rochester, depending, because James Reimer is going to play on this West Coast trip. Make no mistake about it. They're not going to have UPL play all 3 games. There's a back-to-back in there, I believe, the one with Sam.
I think he probably plays Saturday against the Sharks. Is it Saturday? I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I would guess that he would play that game. It's a team he played with recently. It's a team he knows pretty well. And especially if UPL plays well against the Kings tomorrow night, I think they would probably give him Friday against the Ducks. And selfishly, I hope that they do, because I will be in attendance for both games. Yeah. So I hope that's how it goes. And that would mean good things for the team, right? Like if UPL stands on his head and he plays to the level that we all know he can play, that would mean that the Sabres hopefully get 3 or 4 points in these 2 games against the Kings or Ducks.
Yeah, again, and if the worst case scenario happens where we come out of this with 2 or less points, I just, what type of player are we looking for to come back in a trade? Like you just, at this point, you can't really value your prospects as highly as you have, or we saw the draft. He wasn't willing to move away from certain prospects, and and that first round pick, how he tried making a deal, but I think the other teams wanted certain players, and he just held it. Like Ostlund was one of them too. I know Kulig was named in a couple scenarios, but Ostlund too. I know Noah Ostlund's a very, very highly valued prospect in this organization, but in the same breath, like, when's he going to play? You need help.
Yeah, and I would say that your best look at it will be on Friday and Saturday against 2 teams that are rebuilding, and they're in an earlier stage of their rebuilding process than the Sabres are, in the Ducks and the Sharks. And then you look at guys that they potentially, or even have been rumored to get rid of recently. We've talked a lot about Trevor Zegras, and I think most fans would be very happy.
I love Trevor Zegras
with the Sabres trading for a guy like that and bringing him into the top 6. Then you look at the San Jose Sharks. There's a guy that not too many people know about, just casually. I know about him because I picked him up on my fantasy hockey team, and he's been great. But a guy like Mikael Granlund, he's been really, really good this season, and he could immediately slot into your top 6 or your middle 6 and just provide like a baseline that's higher than what you've had recently. So even a guy like that, it wouldn't be the splashiest name like Trevor Zegras, but that's a guy that could at least help your hockey team.
You're bringing in a able body with a pulse who has scored in this league before.
And I'll say that he's much more than just a body with a pulse too. Like he's a very, very good player.
No, but you understand what I'm saying. You're not. We can't afford another Eric even though he's playing well right now, an Eric Robinson level deal at this point. Like that's not going to solve your problems. We have those guys already.
Got to be a guy
our bottom 6.
Could at least be on the 2nd or 3rd line without question.
Yes. A guy that when Tage and Tuck and Greener are healthy, he's on your 3rd line, but he's very flexible to play in your top 6 for the time being and contribute. Kind of like we expected from McLeod.
Yeah. And
would you take another McLeod? Would you take another McLeod level trade, or do you want better?
I at this moment, I would be completely fine with that, given how good McLeod has been. So if you were to get a guy that's a little bit on the younger side with a lot of upside and a lot of traits that could mesh well with your team, a guy that not only has speed, but he has playmaking ability, and he can also score a goal for you every now and then, that's the type of guy you need on the team. He has been a godsend. Imagine if the Sabres didn't have Ryan McLeod this season. Who knows where they would be, right? So another guy like that, at that level, obviously you're not going to get the exact same player, but a guy with similar traits that could add to your middle 6 or top 6, that's the type of guy you need.
Mm-hmm. From Captain Ahab, one of our viewers on YouTube. Any truth to the Bo Byram being on the trading block? I think that we had teams calling us about Bo and Byram. We weren't shopping Bo and Byram, but I think Kevyn Adams shut that down. He wasn't looking to. I would hope that if the deal made sense, he would entertain it. But I think what was said was he had teams calling about Byram and Cousins, but he wasn't looking to deal those players because he wasn't, while he's trying to make his team better, he's also not trying to, hurt it in the long term. I think that's what was said.
He's obviously invested a lot in both guys, right? Dylan Cousins has the contract. He's at least shown in his career that he can produce. And then you trade Casey Middlestat for Bowen Byram, and he's barely played 30 games in the organization. So I think giving him a little bit more run makes sense. And also they're 2 guys that are best friends that seem to fit well in the locker room that everybody seems to like. And of course, that's not what matters most, but they are guys with pretty high ceilings, and they're also very young.
What do you think it'll cost to go get Casey Middlestat?
Right? Would love a guy like that on the team.
What's he going to cost?
But I don't know. Of course, it's not looking amazing 1-for-1 at the moment, but that was always going to happen in the sense that you traded a defenseman for a forward and you sent the forward to a team that has a really, really high level of skill and production. Casey's just in a really good situation right now. He's playing top minutes on one of the most skilled teams in the league. And I think everybody knew what his ceiling was and what his playmaking ability was. So I'm not surprised that he's doing as well as he is with the Avalanche. But I also have no interest in saying that Bo Byram can't be the version of himself that he was with the Avalanche when they won the Cup, and also the best version of himself moving forward. I think he's a pretty good player, and he's made a lot of really good plays this season. So I wouldn't look at that 1-for-1 and be like, oh my God, that was the worst trade ever, because those are two completely different situations.
Yeah, and then I'm reading an article just dropped actually today on NHLTradeRumors.com, which has shown to be reliable in the past, but again, it's all very speculative. But they do have an article up here on the Sabres from Rob Couch. It was published today. Through 18 games, Buffalo Sabres have a negative win-loss record and sit out of a playoff spot. This isn't a new spot for them, as they have been rebuilding for way too long. There are a ton of young, talented players on this team, but it was reported by Darren Dreger that the Sabres are willing to consider a big trade, but don't want to trade away young talent. But the whole team is young. Okay, you're trading away veteran players. Well, the names that are included in there are Zucker, Lafferty, Jordan Greenway, Connor Clifton. Zucker in particular should not be moved, as he has been one of the more valuable players in Buffalo, contributing a good amount from the third line. I agree. Connor Clifton. Why are we trading Connor Clifton? Have you complained once about Connor Clifton this season?
No, I think he's been pretty solid. Yeah.
Why would you trade away that guy? Sam Lafferty, what are you getting for Sam Lafferty?
Yeah, not much.
Not much. So, Jordan Greenway, you're not trading Jordan Greenway. I'm sorry. He's played the blue-collar, Lindy Ruff brand of hockey this season. I don't understand what you're trading for. If you're trying to make a big splash, you're going to have to part with pieces, with prospects and picks. You're just going to have to.
Yeah, and I would say that an outside view at it probably looks at the veteran pieces on the roster and be like, oh, those guys are expendable. But in this current iteration of the team, they're not. And I think they're probably not as familiar with the prospects and picks as we are. So,
yeah, I mean, any player off the top of your head, we already talked about Zegras. Who is a player outside of Granlund? You brought him up. Who is the perfect fit for this team right now? The
dream.
With this team healthy, who are you looking for that could be out on the trading block? That would make sense, is realistic, financially won't hurt you in the future. I mean, Jack Quinn, I don't think we got to worry about him re-signing him to any big deal at the moment. So I think you don't have to, the worries for that are gone.
Honestly, Zegras is, in my opinion, the perfect fit. So I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head from a forward perspective that would be better than him, given his age and that he didn't have the new contract yet. Or did he sign his new deal before the season? I'm not sure.
I think he has 1 year remaining on his deal, and I don't believe he has a no movement clause.
Right. So off the top of my head, he hasn't gotten that second big contract yet. I could be wrong, but he's the type of guy that has shown he has that high-end offensive ability. He's got the swagger. He's very young. He has playmaking ability. Not only can he score goals, he can make really good plays. Imagine him playing with Tage Thompson. That would be unbelievable. So he's the guy that I, especially given his situation with the Ducks, who are actively rebuilding, and he's been rumored to be on the trade market for over a year now.
Yeah, a year now.
So that seems like that would be the best situation. And then on defense, I think the name that everybody's talked about for a long time, it would be a dream of mine as well, but Rasmus Andersson with the Flames. They don't seem to be going anywhere fast at the moment. He's a right-handed defenseman. He's offensively and defensively really gifted. All of his numbers are incredible across the board. We had always talked about Nikolai Ehlers, but the Jets are 15-1, and it seems like they're kind of humming at the moment.
Yeah, they're not trading Ehlers.
Yeah, exactly. So the Jets aren't trading.
I think the dream of Ehlers ended after we apparently turned. Still can't believe that.
Yeah.
I just think how different it might have been.
My top two would be Zegras and Andersson at the moment.
I'm a big fan. We've said I'm a big fan of, there's a couple players in the Flames organization. Rasmus Anderson, Blake Coleman. I mean, that's a kind of like a McLeod level deal. A guy who can come in. He doesn't play at the same speed, but he can fill in on your second line, but really would be a mainstay on your third. I think that we have a Blake here. He's commenting Racco Gudas. I love Racco Gudas. I've always loved Gudas. I loved it when he screamed in what's his face's face from Toronto. Loved every second of it. I think that's definitely a Lindy Ruff style player too. You don't have to worry about him, a lack of physicality with him. But yeah, there's a lot of names out there. Trevor Zegras definitely be the top of the list. Again, a rebuilding Anaheim team, looks like to be a rebuilding Calgary team. There's a few other teams out there too that are in the midst of a rebuild. So there's got to be moves that made. It just can't always be the excuse that players aren't willing to come here. There are players out there without no movement clause. I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe with guys like Trevor Zegras who wouldn't have a say in it. If you want to leave Anaheim, well, guess what? This is where you're going, and he'll be closer to home.
Yeah. For a lot of different reasons, I think it would be an injection of life into the organization, into your top six. It's a name that people would get excited about. I think there would be people that, of course, there would be people, of course, that would get upset and be like, "Oh, he's this same type of player. He's this young, flashy guy. He's not going to play defense." You're not bringing Trevor Zegras in to play defense, so you don't have to worry about that. You're bringing him in to hopefully score 65, 70 points for the next 10 years. So I don't think anybody would say no to that.
No, and who are you putting him on a line with?
That's what I'm saying. Like, imagine putting him with Tage and Tuck. Imagine putting him with Cousins, potentially Quinn, or even Ryan McLeod. Like, imagine anywhere in the top six you can put him. And I mean, him and Cousins, I think, have played against each other many times over the years with USA and Canada, so they have some familiarity. Maybe that's the type of guy that could ignite Dylan Cousins with his playmaking ability and his similar style of play. So, yeah, I think you could put him with anybody, but the thought of him playing with Tuck and Thompson is extremely enticing.
I'm looking it up right now because I just want to be sure that Zegras does have a no move clause, but I'm pretty sure from when I looked at Puckpedia. Let's see here. Don't believe he has any no move clause. It doesn't look like it. And his contract, he has a base salary of $5.75 million that goes into next season and then becomes an RFA. So yeah, I don't think he can have a no movement clause. I mean, maybe he could. I don't know how that works. When you're still in RFA status. But he has not. His numbers haven't been very good. I think he has right here, according to this might haven't been updated yet, but 4 points in 17 games. Not good, but we know what he's capable of. What his skill set and what he brings to the table. So I'd be all for a deal like that. And how could you not be excited bringing in a Trevor Zegras?
Exactly.
Yeah, he plays center, but he can also play on the wing. First line, second line, wherever you decide to slot him. He's going to dramatically improve your power play, which has been better. And like you said, we're not bringing him to play defense. Every team has players like that. You know what I mean? Like guys who, might hurt you defensively, but if you have the right group around him, it's not going to matter so much. Like, when Jack Eichel, Jeff Skinner, and Sam Reinhart were playing together, when Jeff scored 40 goals, do you think people were complaining about his defense? Absolutely not. No shot.
He would effectively fill the Jeff Skinner role that hasn't really been replaced. And he's younger and he's faster. And I think with the right set of coaching, he could be at least like generally responsible in the defensive zone while also giving you that offensive upside that you need.
Yeah, and here's a name that's thrown out there. What about Jonathan Marchessault?
Yeah,
that is a name that's has been whispered in the trade market. I've liked Marchessault.
Great player. Obviously, the Predators aren't off to the best start. In the same vein, I've heard Ryan O'Reilly every now and then over the past few weeks, and I wouldn't be opposed by any means. because he's, of course, he lost his passion for the game while he was here, but it seems like he's regained it, and he's a guy that what you're going to get out of Ryan O'Reilly. He's going to win faceoffs. He's responsible in his own zone. He can still produce at a relatively high level. So, a reunion with Mr. O'Reilly, I wouldn't be too upset about. But obviously, Marchessault, he's a little bit on the older side, but he's a pretty consistent player with a very high floor. A season and a half ago, he was the Conn Smythe winner, obviously on a very good team, but the type of guy that I think you would like to have in your locker room.
As of right now, Marchessault does have a modified no move clause. So I don't know how modified works. Is that where they have to when a trade request comes in, you have to present a list of teams or something like that? Or you?
Yeah,
I don't know how that works.
Like that.
Yeah, I think you have to present them with a list or something like that. Regardless, but before we wrap things up here, I do want to touch on a non-Sabre subject, Ovi Watch. How good at 39 years old? Granted, now it's unfortunate he did suffer that lower body injury, the leg injury, late in last night's game. But the previous game, a hat trick, had 2 goals last night. Might even scored another hat trick 2 straight games. Had that injury not happen, when he comes back, and I fully expect Ovechkin to be back sooner rather than later, just because the guy's just a fucking machine. I saw over his career the amount of I think he's missed less than 60 games in his career, and only 30 something of those were due to injury. Probably a few suspensions in there. I other reasons, sure, but for me, does he break that record this season?
Well, I think I think it's 29 away, right?
I think it's less than that.
I'm almost positive it's 29. I thought I saw that the other day. But even so, it would have been tough even if he was healthy. That's not a necessarily easy thing to do. Of course, the Capitals have been playing really well. Look at a guy like Dylan Strome. He was one of the 5 really good prospects in that McDavid, Eichel, Marner draft. And I think he went 4th or 5th overall. It was Noah Hannafin, Marner, Dylan Strome, Eichel, and McDavid. And now Dylan Strome has 22 points in 16 games. So they've overperformed a guy like Connor McMichael as well. Mm-hmm. But I think it would have been tough.
It's 27 goals, by the way. He needs 27 goals to pass Gretzky.
Yeah, I personally don't think he gets it this season. But I think the beginning of next season is very, very likely. And I think he's absolutely going to play at least 2 more years. So he is going to break the record. And it's going to be one of the coolest accomplishments in the history of sports. Obviously, he's been a really good ambassador for the game. I think there are a lot of people that aren't necessarily the happiest with his politics. His Instagram picture is a picture of him with Vladimir Putin. So,
which I don't think I think he hasn't taken it down because out of fear.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. He's at least been a sympathist in the past, so that does complicate matters personally with regards to him.
You got to try and be able to separate the player from the politics.
For sure, but I mean, as our good friend Dominic Hasek has made clear, he's obviously very passionate about the situation, given his proximity to it in the Czech Republic. It does complicate things a little bit, and you would hope that obviously Ovechkin is not involved with anything to do in Russia. So that's another discussion for another day. But I think that at this point, it's a certainty that he will break it. Given this injury, I do think it happens next season, not this season.
Yeah, I was messaging with my buddy John today because he has 2 graded Ovechkin. Well, one he got to get graded, but Ovechkin rookie cards. One of them, the last time he checked, I think he had an offer for $10,000 for it, and he turned it down. But I think it's currently worth $7,000 on the books. I can only imagine all things like that, memorabilia, cards, anything with his signature on it, is gonna skyrocket in value, this time next year. If it does take till next year for him to break that record. Is there a realistic chance that he sticks around and goes for 1,000 goals?
I don't think so, personally.
I don't think so.
That would be pretty insane for him to do that and have that level of both durability and then also having the skill to do that. That's a lot. That's 150 more goals. Yeah, I think it would be pretty tough. Personally.
Could you imagine? And there's our buddy Arda O'Cal tweeted out too that Ovechkin has broken an NHL record of the number of goalies he has scored on it. Here it is. By scoring on Connor Ingram, Ovi has now gotten the puck past 178 different goalies in his NHL career, matching the great Jaromir Jagr for the all-time lead. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
His longevity, and yeah, it's really amazing. And as good as Sidney Crosby has been, to mention Ovechkin in the same breath, in a different type of breath too, given the type of player he's been, both from a goal scoring and physicality perspective, and he got a cut. Sidney Crosby is going to go down as probably a top 10, top 5 player of all time, but I don't think it's outlandish to say that Ovechkin will as well.
Yeah, I don't think if Ovechkin's in your top 5, I mean, I don't know what you're doing. A guy who realistically, if he did decide to play into his 40s, I mean, he's on pace for 60 goals. Without that injury happening, he had 15 goals in 18 games. The guy's on pace for 60 to 70 goals at 39 years old.
Right.
If you think about it, he played 2 more seasons beyond this after finishing. He could hit 1,000 goals, which would be nuts. It'd be absolutely insane. Could you imagine watching that? We're watching this so closely right now, watching him chase Gretzky. Could you imagine watching him chase 1,000 goals?
It'd be pretty crazy. And at this moment, I don't think it's possible. But again, you never know with a guy like that.
Yeah, I don't know. With if he's motivated enough to do it, I mean, I guess anything's possible. I mean, Jaromir Jagr is playing in his final season right now at the age of 50 or 50, whatever, for how old he is. If you love the game enough and you're willing to play long enough, I mean, if you're motivated enough, I would love to see that.
Father, as we saw during the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight on Saturday, Father Time is undefeated.
That fight, man. We were all conned, weren't we?
I wasn't.
I mean, I had a feeling, not even just because of Tyson's age, but like just Jake Paul fights in general, how they tend to go. Yeah,
that thing was staged from the moment they signed a contract.
Oh, and definitely.
If you thought that it was going to be a legitimate thing where he was going to try to knock him out, or they were going to try to knock each other out.
Yeah,
he's good, man. Jake's a smart guy.
And Tyson got paid more for going the distance.
Exactly.
Which I've heard he's had money trouble, so I can see that. But like, there was a guy who broke it down. And you watched his training videos on that short like Netflix series, like the power he was hitting with and training.
Those are highly edited and also 20 seconds long.
Yeah, I know, but
and he's not facing any type of resistance. He's not.
I understand that. But did you see him try and punch with that kind of power at all during that fight?
No, of course not.
Not at any point.
No.
It was pulling his punches. The guy broke it down. He's like, there were different moments where Jake Paul like left himself wide open, and an intelligent fighter like Tyson, who was looking right at it, would have taken advantage. Should have taken advantage of it, but didn't. I agree with you. I think that whole fight was scripted. The women's fight before that was incredible.
Oh, one of the best boxing matches I've ever seen.
Watched.
And if something good came out of that, it was the exposure that was gained specifically for women's boxing, and 2 of the greatest women's boxers of all time, in Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. So that's the best thing to come out of that night, in my opinion. And hopefully there's some momentum for that moving forward.
Yep. Agreed. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Big West Coast swing. Personally, I'm very excited. I'll be in the building the next 2 games, downtown at Crypto, downtown LA, and then driving down to Anaheim Friday night. Hopefully have a relative amount of health on the team, and specifically when it comes to Tage and Tuck, and they can play a pretty good game, especially tomorrow night against a really good team that they played well last season. Obviously had a tough game to begin this year, but if you can at least get 1 point tomorrow night, that'll be huge moving forward into the weekend against 2 teams that haven't played too well this season. And as we mentioned, in the Ducks and the Sharks are in the middle of a rebuild. So I'm hoping for 4. I think 5 and potentially even 6 with a good game tomorrow night is really possible. And that should be the goal moving forward, especially in these small stretches of the season. We talked about 10 of 14 games in November. I don't think that's possible at this point, but I think they could still get 8 or 9. And that would be massive moving into December when the schedule gets a little bit harder, playing against the Rangers again, playing against the Jets, playing against some of the tougher teams in the West and the East as well. So these are big few games, and I'm excited to be in the building for it, and I will represent as well as I
can. According to Hunter Rosen, Quinn would have to pass through waivers. Again, I don't know. I'll take his word for it. I thought because he's on an entry-level contract, he didn't have to.
Yeah.
I always thought that was the rules.
You wouldn't want to risk that. He would probably
he'd be gone. He'd be scooped up immediately, and you'd lose him for nothing. Yeah, I again, big West Coast trip here. 3 very hopefully winnable games if you're healthy. If you come out of this trip with 4 to 6 points, I'm extremely happy. And again, we mentioned before, this could be our make or break situation for Kevyn Adams in terms of getting something done to add to this roster. Just want to remind everybody, this is brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room, with over 300 beers to choose from at all their locations with live music, trivia, and entertainment. Go there for a Sabres game, a Bills game, whatever sporting event you want to partake. They usually have it on one of the TVs there, and let them know 2 Goalies, 1 Mike sent you. And of course, Buffalo Apparel. Make sure you check them out at Buffalo Co. on Instagram and Twitter, Buy Local, and at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter, fattybeer.com. Please make sure if you enjoyed this episode that you hit the like button, subscribe. It really does help us a lot. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can find us at our handles there below. I'll bring it up right now. Unfortunately, you got a little OV watch there blocking it. You can find me at Duane S39, at CHurls13, at 2 Goalies, 1 Mike. This is Duane for 2 Goalies, 1 Mike for Connor Hurley. This has been episode 170. We will talk to you. Do we stay up for Sabres After Dark? Do I stay up for Sabres After Dark?
You tell me.
You're going to the LA game, right? You're going to the LA game.
10:30 start time tomorrow night on the East Coast. So
we'll play it by ear. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm going to be a fair weather fan and only do it if they win, but that is like a 1 o'clock in the morning post game for us, not for you, obviously, but I'd be down to do a post game, little Sabres After Dark, I'll hang up and listen after dark. If we get a Sabres win tomorrow,
a little bit earlier on Friday too. It's a 7 o'clock start time. So let's say they beat the Ducks. And
I thought it was 8 o'clock. I thought it was 8 o'clock.
It's a 7 p.m. puck drop on Friday, because I got to get down to Anaheim after work. 7 p.m. Pacific. So that would be
okay. So it's still
10
late for
p.m.
me.
Eastern. Yeah. What I'm saying is that it's a little bit earlier, and it's also a Friday. So there is more of a chance that I think more people will stay up on the weekend. Hopefully, people are out having a good time. I'll join in if we get the dub on Friday. So let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
All right, great. Well, we'll talk to you guys hopefully post game tomorrow night. We'll see. But as always, go Sabres.